taking a long time to go live. Oh, there we go. Okay. Close the. Okay, welcome everybody. So happy everyone's here. It's like literally Erev Yom Tif. That's what it feels like. And we're still in Perek Membeis, and I love that because it's the perfect time to be talking about Ava and Yira when we're about to crown Hashem as our king and embark on this relationship. And this year should be a brand new relationship, a new start to our relationship with Hashem. So it's a perfect way to be actually preparing for Rosh Hashanah. I'm excited about what we're going to be on the shir by Rabbi Paltiel. And he just clarifies so many things in the way that he describes the Tanya. But he starts off with this mashal. And I've shared this mashal before, but I think it's an important mashal to bring back in because in this Perek, you're going to see how it's very much highlighted. So what's the mashal? The mashal is about an expert climber where he has to be able to get to this certain mountain and climb this mountain. It's a very complex hike, very complex risk climb. And imagine the man getting to the top, and he finally reached the top, and he's just thinking about the years and the training and the professionalism that has given him the ability to accomplish this great goal. And he gets to the top, and who does he see but a child playing on the top of this mountain? And he runs over to the child and he says, he at first literally cannot speak. And then finally is able to speak. And he asks the child, how did you get here? Like, he worked for years how did you get here? And the child said, I was born here. I've always been here. And so why do we bring this mashal? Because there's something to the Jewish experience of this mountain climber where you're trying so hard. The struggle is real. The training, the preparation, the fighting with your mind, the fighting with your guf to get to a certain place, to get to that reaching some sort of goal. And then there's also another part of ourselves, another part of just being a Jew, which is you're already there. You were born there. It is your birthright. And that's an important thing to keep in mind as we journey through the Tanya, because chapters 1 through 17 is mainly talking about the struggle, the deep, powerful struggle of the very human part of ourselves. And after that, we start delving a little bit more into the child who you're already there experience and how to access that and how to reveal that and bring that out of ourselves. Because it's very hard to access. It's not easy, but we're not saying that there's an easy road here. We're just trying to say that there's a struggle climbing from way below to a high point, or you're at that high point, you're just not aware of it. You didn't even know that this was something special, like the child on top of the mountain who didn't even realize that someone's been working for years to try to get to the place where he was actually born. So we need a combination of the two, and in this Perek, we're going to discuss how to actualize the two of those. How do we use this information and bring it to all? So we need a struggle, but we also need the inborn faith. And the way to get to it, the way to climb and the way to reveal both of those last week, hispainus. Okay? So we're going to be talking about what does that actually mean? What does hispainus mean? How to do it? What does it look like? Seeing if we can make it practical, seeing if we can make it something accessible to all of us. So when it comes to hispainus, people usually translate it as contemplation. But really, there's a combination of meditation and contemplation. Actually, there's really 3 steps to hispainus because you have to actually have something to think about. So that piece also has to happen. So there's also the learning that has to happen too. So what does it look like? It looks like first There's the learning, engaging my mind, involving myself in ideas that are obviously directed or oriented around God, Torah, mitzvahs. So I'm using my mind to engage with all of those things. And then what happens after I'm engaging with my mind, then what happens is that that's a stimulus for me to feel something, to connect with something, to feel warmer towards Hashem or to Judaism or to Torah and mitzvahs. And then after that, it's supposed to impact my behavior. Okay, so that's like the journey in very simple steps of what his spineless is supposed to be to the concept of engaging your mind to help you in your Avodah. There were definitely some Jews who believed don't use your mind. Yes, use your mind to learn Torah, but your mind doesn't have to be. I definitely think that a part of my hashkafa growing up was just do the right thing. And there is space for that. There's something about the Kabbalah soul of don't get your mind involved, just do the next right thing and don't go with your mind because your mind can trap you. Your Yetzer Hara could get involved with your mind, right? I remember my father always telling me, if you're about to do a mitzvah and then you hear a voice saying like, okay, but if you do this, you'll be able to do that. And then in 5 minutes, he's like, any sort of negotiation that you hear in your mind right before you're about to do a mitzvah, that's the Yetzer Hara. He would tell me negotiations, reasonings, justifications, thoughts, any of those, don't listen to them because it's all the Yetzer Hara. Which is true, right? I hear that. I could definitely hear that. And then on the other side, the Alter Rebbe says, we do have to engage the mind because the mind is the way that we connect with all parts of ourselves. And as soon as we could harness the mind, we could impact the whole human experience. We could bring all of everything on board. And if you just shut your mind out, yes, you are fulfilling Hashem's mission, you're fulfilling Hashem's goal, and Kabbalah Soul has a huge role here. That's what we're talking about. But there's something about choosing to serve Hashem instead of just doing it with like a slave mentality. We're going to talk about that a little bit more after. So how do we engage? Like we've been talking about here, we need two wings. You need Ava and Yira to be able to have this passionate relationship with the Eibishter. And that's what we've been talking about. We've been talking about Ava and Yira in the last Perek first, then comes Ava. And here in Base, we're going to be talking a little bit more about Yira. Now, what's interesting is, the describes it as there's different levels of Ava. There's the Ava that I feel as a human being, and then there's the deeply spiritual Ava. There's a Yira that you could feel as a human being, and there's very spiritual Yira. And both levels of those, we want to experience both levels of those towards Hashem, and we want to bring all of ourselves to Him. We want to connect all of ourselves to the Eibishter. So how to do that, right? Because Hashem sometimes feels very distant. He feels very hidden. It's actually, in ways, if you think about it, it's so easy to love another person or to have Yira for another person. They're right there, right? Like, how often are we intimidated by another woman in the community? All the time. Because she's there. I see her. I see what she's doing. I know what she's thinking about me. It's so easy to be intimidated or fear her. And it's so easy to love someone in your life. They love you, you love them back. It's so not complicated. It's so clear. But when it comes to God, He's the professional at hiding Himself and camouflaging Himself beneath all the miracles that are our life. And so therefore, it's not so easy to be able to really see Him and feel that fear and feel that love. So somehow we have to connect the human love and fear that we have that is pretty simple and easy for us to access to a much deeper, much more spiritual love fear that we have available to us, like the Mount Gap. Bridge the gap between the love and fear that I know that is easy for me to access when it comes to my kids, my family, people in the community, whatever it is, and the love and fear that is a spiritual experience for God. And that bridge, the Alter Rebbe believes, was Hisbonenus, is Hisbonenus. Okay, so that's going to be basically the theme for the next few prakim on what does it look like to engage your mind in order to spark love and fear for God in order to make that and translate that into your real everyday life. How to connect your below fear and your lowly fear and love and your higher spiritual love and fear. Okay? So, like we were speaking about last time, we're going to talk more about the fear aspects first. Because in Perek Malef, in the relationship, Yira has to come first. So when we talk about Kabbalah's Ol Malchus Shemayim, there's an interesting piece, right? So we touched upon this last week, but I want to bring it back here again. What is the root of love? When I think about love, right, this outward experience, I'm loving someone, I'm giving something to them, I'm showing them how much they matter to me. The experience, or at least the impetus for that expression, it's me, right? That's what love is. It starts with me. It's something that I love, right? So when you look at Ava, even in a deeply spiritual self, it's coming from here, as opposed to Yira. When you look at the concept of Hashem, respect the world, and you pull it apart and say, what is the impetus for it? When you strip it of all of its externalities, what's at its core? It's him. It's about the other, right? So like the example I gave last time, when I don't know, you have a niece or nephew or a grandchild that you really love, your child, and you pick up that child and you just want to like squeeze them because they're so yummy and just like kiss their face off. But then they're saying, no, I don't want to. Like, I don't appreciate that. And you put them down. What is that? That's respecting their space, right? That wasn't me oriented. That's them oriented. I'm looking at this child and saying, you matter more to me. I love you, but like you matter more to me, and I will respect and make space for you more than for myself. That means that the impetus for this expression is you, not me. So Yira at its core is God-oriented, is Hashem-oriented. And it's really important to remember that, because while we're talking about Yira, right, we've been developing this whole concept of Yira. What is it? That's supposed to be the end goal, right? The end goal is that I'm supposed to acknowledge, recognize God always. My whole experience is always supposed to be aware, considering Hashem in the world, right? And so therefore, to remind ourselves of that, let's first think, what's the first step? The first step is Yira, where at its core, it's God-oriented, not me-oriented. Okay? There's a reference for this in Tanakh, which is really interesting. So a few times throughout Tanakh, you'll see a person's name mentioned twice. Nayach, Nayach, Avraham, Avraham, Hashem, Hashem, Yaakov, Yaakov. And Rashi says the reason for that is it's like symbolic of love. It's an experience of love that their name is mentioned twice. That's what Rashi says. Now, the famous question comes up, which is Yitzchak is never mentioned twice. Which is a little bit interesting, right? Avram is mentioned twice, Yaakov mentioned twice, even Nayach, Moshe Rabbeinu. So Yitzchak wasn't loved. Like, we don't look at him with that beautiful love. So Chassidus explains with this idea of the two mentioning of the names. And Chassidus says that when Avram is mentioned twice, there's a lower level of Avram and there's a higher level of Avram. There's a lower level of Avram's midah of chesed, and there's a higher level of Avram's midah of chesed. And when Hashem, or the Torah, is saying that name twice, it's merging the two. It's bridging the gap of this lower level of Avram and this higher level of Avram. So Avram Avinu represented chesed, represented Ava, love. So it's merging the two. Moshe Rabbeinu represented Das. So there's a merging of the two. Yitzchak represented Yira, fear. There doesn't have to be two for Yira, because there isn't like my conscious reality and a godly conscious reality of the two, and those two have to merge. At Yira's core is just God, because it's all based on other. So if I'm experiencing Yira, it's by definition not about me, but at its core, it's about Hashem. It's about the other. Wait, do you remember that story I shared with you last time? I keep on sharing it because I think it's such a great story. Story about Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai when he's on his deathbed. His students say, "Give us a bracha," and he says, "I give you a bracha that you should fear Hashem as much as you fear your neighbors." And they were insulted. They said, "How can you insult us like that?" And he said, "You don't even realize how much you fear your neighbors. You don't even realize how much their opinions or the way they think or how much consideration you give them or even just the mind space it takes in your mind. You don't even realize how much that takes up. Should bless you that you should let Hashem in to that extent." And if we're talking about Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's students, how much more so for us? I know for myself, deeply impacted by my neighbors. So it's important to be able to, at our core, look at Yira and say, that acknowledgement of the other, it should be my core response in life, should be my core avodah in life. How could I increase my acknowledgement of Eibishter in my life? How to do that? So the Alter Rebbe says, this master-slave mashal, right? And we were talking about this a little bit last time. What is this master-slave mashal? So when you think of slavery, it actually feels a little distasteful, like doesn't feel so much fun. Like so much fun. There isn't any, it doesn't seem like a relationship there. Why? Because there's no ava. There's a lot of yira, relationship for me. The servitude makes me feel like I'm a nothing. Meanwhile, what is a slave relationship, right? A master-slave relationship or a servant relationship is the idea that he is submissive. He has surrendered himself to the master. Now, in the mashal, right, in that relationship, usually the slave doesn't have a choice, as opposed to a yid who chooses to surrender to the Eibishter. And that's a huge difference and important to keep in mind. We are choosing to surrender, and that's the whole theme of Rosh Hashanah. Choosing to submit ourselves, to relinquish control, to allow Hashem to allow the reality, which is that Hashem is in full control and directs every aspect of my life. So when we think about the servant and the master, there's not really much love lost between the two of them. It's not like they have a relationship that's based on love. The master doesn't really care about the servant. And the servant doesn't usually care so much about the master. He just does the master's bidding. Or else, I don't know, he'll get whipped, he'll get hurt, he won't get breakfast that morning, right? He's going to get punishment somehow, right? So that's usually what happens. Now, there is a level of servitude where the slave or the servant does experience a level of pleasure, right? So imagine this servant who fulfills the master's bidding and he feels good. He feels the joy that the master would feel to see the job well done, right? So he sets up a party or he mows the lawn and it's done in a way, not just like where, right? So the first two levels would be he does a bad job and gets whipped. He does a good enough job that he doesn't require whipping, but he passed. And then there's a higher level where the servant feels like he really wants to do the bidding of the master, so much so that he does it so well that he experiences the tainug that the master experiences with the job well done. That's the level of a yid serving the Eibishter with yira. Such a taking on, I guess, or a locked in experience of what Hashem's experience is, what Hashem wants from me, that I even experience pleasure in what he wants. So, and this is something very relatable. We've heard of this before. So like, let's say Hiddur Mitzvah, the concept of beautifying a mitzvah. A lot of people, Sukkot is around the corner. A lot of people talk about Hiddur Mitzvah when it comes to Sukkot, getting a beautiful esrei, getting a lot of hadassim. I know some people decorate the sukkah, make the mitzvah feel beautiful. What is that? That is a way of submitting to the master in a way that you're feeling the joy that the master feels. You're excited about it, not because you technically are excited about this or because your fleshly desires are to have a beautiful esrei, but because you have so submitted yourself to being, your identity is I am, and Hashem wants me to have this, and I want it to be beautiful, and now my pleasure is his pleasure. It's the same. It's one and the same. So usually when we think of Hiddur mitzvah, you think of like, oh, this is like about me and it makes me so excited. It makes me happy. Like a lot of times women will talk about, let's say, Hiddur mitzvah within the context of like, let's say my tablescape for Sukkot, or like my, how I'm like making my Shabbos table beautiful. And that is beautiful. But what I want to reveal to you, almost like in a deeper way, that's not just love because you love the mitzvah and it makes you feel good, but there's also an element of yira there, where you, as a servant of Hashem, are excited to partake in his pleasure. That's a whole nother level, right? Because like we were saying before, your ava, your love of the mitzvah, that's contagious and that's delicious and that's a chinuch for your children and that's beautiful. And it could be a little self-oriented, like I'm inspired. I'm going to like make a beautiful, I don't know, tablescape for Kriyas Yamsef on Pesach. Gorgeous, right? Making it relatable, making it like that your human self is excited about it too. Feels like Ava, feels like love. And at the same time, it's also important to know that there's an element there of Kabbalah soul, which you have to hear the distinction to see. But if you're experiencing pleasure in Hashem's will, then that's Yer Shemayim. And it's a high level of Yer Shemayim. So how to experience this ultimate level of servitude, how to get to this place that I could grow my awareness, that I could experience pleasure in Hashem's pleasure. Again, come back to it. The Alter Rebbe says, his bainos. What does that look like? So, in the words of Rabbi Paltiel, it's an art and a science, literally, because it's not easy. It's really not easy. The first lesson is to learn, to do what you're all doing here, to engage your mind in Torah and mitzvahs. So that means you have to fill your head with something. You can't contemplate on Hashem and there's nothing inside, right? So part of the process is oftentimes a rabbi will tell someone who's serious about contemplation that not only should you learn, you should memorize a Perek, memorize like a Perek of Tanya, let's say, or memorize a Parsha. You have to memorize something. Why? Because not just do you have to have something in your head, now you're going to have to be able to clear your mind of everything else. And to keep that level of concentration, especially nowadays, is extremely challenging. Think about something, right? Even just, I know for myself, if I'm sitting in a shir, I'm there, I'm listening, and then every 20 seconds, something happens and I'm gone for a few seconds, and then I come back. I don't remember the exact amount of seconds that we are able to focus, but it's shrinking by the year. So, what someone said, such a funny line yesterday, she was telling me a meme, which is like not a Torah class meme, but I'll say it anyway. It's a not Jewish meme. So they were saying they have to make a movie nowadays that could hold my concentration so that I'm not scrolling while I'm watching the movie. So you could hear like what our level of concentration is. We can't even watch a movie anymore without scrolling at the same time. We're dealing with a katnus, that is a lessening of the ability to concentrate even. So it's hard. It's very, very challenging. And that's why it's important to start with tiny, tiny little segments of concentration. So what does it do? It's a practice. It's a practice where you first fill your mind with something, and then you empty your mind of everything else. And then you have to dwell on that one thing. And even just trying it for 30 seconds, you'll see how difficult and how challenging it is to stay focused on just one idea, one concept. And even if it's too hard to stay on a concept, start with a visualization. It's hard to even stay on that. So start with that and see where it goes. So in this concept of hisbonenus, right, besides for it being challenging to learn, to clear the mind, and then to stay there, the Alter Rebbe also describes, and I find this so beautiful, that the Alter Rebbe really sees us as human beings and sees like how hard things are to actualize. He talks about the Yigias Nefesh and the Yigias Basar. And he says that there's like a toiling that has to happen, toiling through your body and toiling in your soul to be able to really focus on God. And the way to understand that is that us as a human being, this person, this fleshly person that's sitting in front of you is a composite of all of my experiences, of everything that I've ever gone through, everything that I've seen, everything that I've touched, everything that has happened here. Now, it doesn't take away from the fact that I have a lot of good in me that has happened throughout my life up till this moment, but there's also a lot of not good or neutral. And all of that I'm bringing to the picture, I'm bringing to the table, right? So when I'm sitting down to contemplate, I'm bringing me to that experience. And the meanness will get in my way, right? So let's say, I don't know, I'm a person who has just been sitting around a whole day doing nothing. And then at night I'm like, it's a good idea. Let me contemplate. So all that nothingness of my day, it's neutral. It wasn't even like I was sinning. It's not like I was doing anything, unless I'm a man and then I'm like wasting time from learning Torah. But I'm still bringing all that heaviness to the table, right? Or let's say I'm a person who's like really invested into food. Like I'm a major foodie and like all day I'm thinking and tasting and experiencing food. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's like a certain heaviness to the body then that you're bringing to the table when you're trying to be an elevated, in your mind kind of person. It drags you down. And that's why there's a concept of iskafia, where the Alter Rebbe talks about maybe being a little bit more simple or not engaging as much with physicality. It might make it easier for you to connect with spirituality and with God. Now, it doesn't mean that we have to be hermits and live in the mountaintops and not engage with materialism at all. Of course not. Chas v'shalom, Hashem wants us to engage. But there's engaging and there's engaging. And so the Alter Rebbe says, just keep in mind, right? So he's not even talking about necessarily even the realm of sin, but he's saying, just know, I see you. That whatever your experience has been, you're bringing to the table, and still, that's okay. It's going to be hard. It's hard for everybody. But whatever your playing field is, whatever your starting point is, that's your starting point. And you can still do it, which is so empowering to hear, right? The Alter Rebbe is really seeing you. It's not like saying, oh yeah, this is how you do it, and like make sure to do it, and I'll give you practical steps. He's saying, I know you. I know what's bringing you down. I know what's heavy on you. And still you'll be able to do this, even with bringing that to the table. And I love this point because recently I was talking to someone and she was like berating herself. She was making fun of herself for she was sharing something with me that was like a win. And I was saying, wow, that's amazing that you did that. So you were able to, I don't know, apologize to your husband or take accountability to your child, whatever it is. And she's like, oh, apologize. I should be able to do this, right? So she was disparaging herself. And I said, why are you judging your starting point, right? Everyone has their own starting points. Everyone has their own set of challenges, but it's not helping anybody, especially not you, for you to be discouraged by your starting point. You didn't make your starting point. Hashem made it. You are, with your certain set of challenges, exactly the way you are because Hashem made you that way. So don't make fun of it and don't get bogged down by it by comparing yourself to another person. This is you. And so wherever you are and whatever steps that you take to rise above your starting point, what you bring to the table, that's huge. Don't look at yourself and say, but I really should be like her. But you're not her, right? And Hashem doesn't look at her and compare her to you and say you should have been better at making, I don't know, be a better parent or be a better wife or be a better teacher or just be a better human being like her. Chas v'shalom. Hashem will never say that. Hashem knows exactly who you are and where you should be and how you're growing and what tiny steps you're taking forward to do that. And by acknowledging yourself and being really honest with yourself, that helps you in your journey instead of the opposite. So I feel here like this is a place in the Tanya where the Alter Rebbe is really stopping and saying, I see you. Now, the other step that has to happen is Hispanus can't work just alone. Because you can contemplate on something and you could think about it and you'll have very great people, very smart people contemplate and still remain very heavy and very weighed down by the world and not really impacted by what they're being mispaining on. And the famous mashal for that is, imagine like a peasant who wasn't able to read, and he had people coming to, like a malame, like a teacher, to come and teach his children. And one day this teacher comes to teach his children. He says, "I got this letter from my hometown. I live very far away. Could you read to me what this letter says from my hometown?" And so this teacher starts reading it out loud, and he says, "I'm sorry to tell you, but they're informing you that your father has passed away." And the peasant faints on the floor. Afterwards, they revive him, and he's crying, and obviously he's shocked and in so much pain. A few days later, the teacher comes to him and he says, "I'm sorry for your loss, but like, I don't understand. I am able to read, so therefore I connected with the information so much more than you, but I didn't faint." And the peasant looked at him and he says, "You're a fool. It's my father." Right? You're talking about connection with what? Connection with words. You were able to read, so you're what, more lofty, so you were able to connect with the information faster and better than me. It's my father, right? So it's just a mashal, or rather a joke. But the idea is connecting with the information is different than just learning it and knowing it. It's when it's relatable to you, when it's personal. That's when it matters. Right? So there's another concept here where the Alter Rebbe says you have a midah called das. What is das? Usually it's translated as knowledge, but Chassidus speaks about das as if it's connection. The first time we hear the word das, we hear Adam Arishon. It says that Adam Arishon yada es Chava, he knew Chava. What does that mean? It means they connected. They connected in a way that they were able to give over children. Das is actually not just understanding or hearing intellectual property, it's connecting with intellectual property, right? So you'll have Chachma Bina Das. Chachma is like the creative ideas. Bina is analysis, and that covers intellectual thought. But then there's the connecting with that thought. That is the realm of Das. And it happens to be that it's almost like a God-given gift. You'll have some people who really connect with ideas and could feel about them. And there's some people who have a much harder time connecting with an idea, or even just feeling any sort of resulting connection with it. It's not an intellectual connection and it's not an emotional connection. It's just caring, not in an emotional way. It's just like, how is this information relevant to me? How do I care about it? Does it impact me in any sort of way? That's the concept of das. And it's interesting that David HaMelech, on his deathbed, he tells his son Shlomo, who at the time was about 12 years old. Shlomo was already king. And David HaMelech appointed Shlomo as the successor before he passed away. And he says, Das es Elokei Avicha. Know Hashem, your father is God. Now, it's a funny thing to tell Shlomo Melech, who even at the time was already a genius, knew Torah backwards and forwards, was a king, so he had written a Torah, like written out a Sefer Torah. Is he telling him to learn more Torah? Is he telling him to find out about God, find your inner truth? No. He's saying, Das, you know everything now. Connect with it. Feel it. See how it impacts you, changes you, takes away the fleshliness of you, and reveals the true you. That's what David HaMelech was imparting to his child before he passed away. The Alter Rebbe brings an interesting Gemara. And this Gemara is speaking about Moshe Rabbeinu talking to Bnei Yisrael, similar to the whole premise of the entire Tanya, where Moshe Rabbeinu says, Ki'im liyira, which means all you have to do is fear Hashem. That's it. That's all you got to do. Not a big deal. And the Gemara asks, that sounds like a big deal. Yira is a very big deal. Why does it sound like Moshe Rabbeinu is playing it down? And also, so some answers are oh, Moshe Rabbeinu is speaking to himself, but he's not speaking to himself. He's speaking to Bnei Yisrael. So why would he say Kiyim liyira? Like that's all you have to do, just yira. And the Alter Rebbe actually explains that in every generation there's a tzaddik who exemplifies a certain midah, and then because of that midah, or because he or she struggled with that midah, it's like a gift that he imparts to the generation, and he impacts the neshamas of that generation. So because he is that leader and because he has that direct connection to all of those neshamas, he gifts something to the generation. So Avraham was chesed, Yitzchak was gevura, and it says that Moshe Rabbeinu was das. So when he says ki'im liyira, he's saying, I am imparting to you this ability to connect with yira. So even if you think it's such a lofty thing, it's totally beyond me. I am like this hiker on the bottom of the mountain. There's no way I will ever be a climber and be able to reach that high. Moshe Rabbeinu says, you already have it within you because I gave it to you as a gift. It's there. You just have to reveal the child within who's already on the top of the mountain, who's already in that state of yira, who's already so impacted by Hashem, who already lives that level of acknowledging Hashem in his life. You have that. You have access to that gift. It's just about revealing it. And so when we connect with people who are greater than us or with the tzaddik of the generation, what that is doing is literally peeling away the layers so that we have the ability to find that yira within us, to find the das within us. And that reveals our capacity to connect with Hashem, to experience what we have been talking about, which is that love and fear, to be able to fly up to the Eibishter and have this beautiful relationship. That yira has to be revealed first. The way to do it is two-pronged. Either we do that yigias nefesh, yigias guf, where we're working through all the stuff that needs to be cleared. Our mind has to be cleared. Our physicality has to be cleared. And then we meditate and we have something to think about. And that's one way for us to reach in and connect with the concept of God. And the other way is to just have das, to just really know that inside I have this midah of das, like I have all these other midas. The spheres are within me just like they are part of Hashem. And if I have that das inside of me, I have that ability to connect with it. I just need to remember that and think about it, and that way I could reveal what I already am. So why is this important to remember right before Rosh Hashanah? Because I think a lot of times we are in a state of fear. It's Rosh Hashanah, what's going to happen this year? Have I been focused enough during Elul? I know I haven't been. And there's a lot of fear already there. But there's different levels of fear of the servant-master relationship. There's another level of fear of, I'm just going to do what I have to do because this is what Hashem wants from me. I'm just going to plug ahead. And then there's also this fear of, I so acknowledge the Eibishter in my life, and he's so important to me, and I have so much awareness of him that what brings him joy brings me joy too. So as we're embarking on this journey of deepening our relationship with the Eibishter, I think it's an important thing to think about all those different levels and connect with all of those different levels, because all of them are important to consider. To fear Hashem just like we fear our neighbors. We care about what they think. We should care about what he thinks. We should also engage with him just in doing what he says, Kabbalah Soul. And then also to have an experience of Yira where you respect and are in awe of him, his himness, that it impacts you. It changes who you are. That the next time you think like, do I want to engage with, I don't know, this and this thing, that's something that we all have that challenges us, instead of engaging with it, I'm going to think, you know what? There's a grow my awareness of him. And if I engage with this, whether it's neutral or not, it might over that. And that ability to consider him, to bring awareness of him, to respect him, to make connecting with the experience of Yira, that deep level of fear, not just a lower level of fear. So I want to give us all a bracha that we could experience Ava and Yira over Rosh Hashanah. We should enter in this relationship with a full, and was going to give us an incredible, and we should all daven for one another and experience gula, real gula in our lives.